Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. Practice is an unrehearsed, unedited look into my workflow. My name's Stuart. I'm a digital artist, designer, illustrator, animator, currently rocking out of San Francisco, California. Um, this show is basically a live look into my workflow, and I'm excited to have everyone back for another episode this week. Last week was great. We came up with a really funky alien landscape. We used like basically no modeling, and essentially all of our work and all of the the heavy hitting parts of our image came from just displacement maps based on images I had taken of some lichens, which is different from the way I typically work. And so this week, what I think we're going to do is we're going to model a crazy ancient building, a temple of sorts with all kinds of mysterious and creepy components and iconography, perhaps, and maybe a big sort of ruinous, you know, sculpture or carving that's kind of fallen apart. And then I think what we'll do is we'll take that piece, and next week we're gonna craft another displacement landscape around it. Enjoyed myself so much putting that one together that I definitely want to try doing that again. But thinking, instead of just really simple pyramids incorporated into that scene, why don't we make a little bit more of an interesting piece of architecture? So that's the game plan for this week. Couple updates. First of all, I have a new URL for my portfolio, which is kind of fun. I'm at diligence.studio. We live in the modern age where we can have all these fancy URL suffixes. So you could have .pizza or .network or all kinds of cool stuff. So I went with .studio for mine. Check my work out there. Have some more updates coming for you soon. Second thing is, and maybe y'all are getting tired of all the live streaming, but I've started last week and into this week. I just kicked off a new series of sketch streams. I figured it'd be nice to have a little bit of a different look than the practice every now and again, right? Because this is digital art. It's probably not as accessible for most viewers. It's it's obviously a lot longer format. We usually go an hour and a half, 2 hours on these shows, and that's a lot for me to put together. But I also understand that probably hardly anyone actually watches the whole thing, right? So I thought it'd be cool to just do some really impromptu stuff, something that I don't have to schedule far in advance because that makes it easier on me. And then we just sketch for 20 minutes, do some quick drawings, and I think that's a little bit more accessible for everyone else, and certainly simpler to watch. So check those out. All right, I'm just gonna start hopping in and modeling this. We've got a bunch of cool reference pulled up. So I'm going to be looking at all kinds of images while I'm modeling this thing today, and definitely want to come up with a whole range of ideas to incorporate it. So cool. Let's do this thing. I usually mention this during the intro. Um, of course, it goes without saying that this show is best when people are in the chat saying what's up, asking questions, sharing what they're working on. If you're working on anything cool, if you have any questions, if you just want to get some feedback on a piece or get some more eyes on it, hit me up. We'll maybe while this thing is rendering or when we get to a good stopping point, I can pull up whatever link you send and share it with everybody. We'll show and tell action, yeah. Hey Dexter, hey Candy. What is happening? Thanks for tuning in today. So I don't know if you caught the intro, but we're working on like a temple, like an ancient mystic temple ruin. And the plan is to spend today modeling this really cool sculptural ancient thing. And then next week, we're going to add it to another one of those displacement landscapes like we did the week before. So I think the two will go really well together. I'd like to do another one of those displacement scenes. I thought that was really fun. It came out really nicely. And it'd be cool to incorporate some architecture into that that's a little bit more complex than just those pyramids we did the last time. Now, I'm thinking about it, I wonder if that's just going to be too complex. I wonder if the imagery, or if the pyramid worked well with that landscape because the pyramids were so simple and the landscape was so complex. Perhaps. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, that's the plan. So right now, as usual, I'm just spending the early part blocking out shapes, getting the forms right. So I've got a lot of reference pulled up here too. I'm not sure exactly what shape this thing's going to take, but I want to pull influences from all types of cultures and images and stuff like that. I always find this kind of stuff super fascinating, just ancient as hell, from another time. Especially, these are cool, the nice manicured ones, but I think it's even more inspiring, even crazier looking when they're mixed into like a jungle or the natural landscape of some sort. How badass is that? I think that like uh, perhaps it isn't said enough, but when you're coming up with something, especially something conceptual like this, gosh, look at images. Constantly be feeding your eye, right? Like, how are you gonna come up with something that looks cool if you're not constantly looking at cool stuff? Um, I spend a huge part of my day just not even just design stuff, but just things that are interesting to look at. I think we sort of get almost confused is a strong word, but we spend all this time looking at you know stuff that other artists or designers have made, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but they're pulling their influences from somewhere as well, and it's probably that the artists you admire most, the influences they're pulling are probably not all just from other artists, right? And the other thing is we're not making art necessarily for other artists as well. Um, so I think that being said, you gotta look at reference and inspirational stuff that's not just more art and design, right? So I mean, I guess you could argue that, and you'd be right, perhaps, that this stuff is art and design. It was designed by someone a long time ago. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is uh, this is like ancient stuff. It's not something you're finding on your Tumblr page or on Twitter, unless of course you're following whatever some ancient temple architecture account, which you could be. Sounds pretty awesome, actually. In fact, if anyone has an account like that or knows of one, forward it my way because I definitely want to forward that kind of shit, but or follow that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling, but dude, vary your sources. Look at lots of imagery. If you've got a project coming in and you're gonna you're gonna be designing a certain type of thing, or illustrating a certain type of thing, or even just working on a certain kind of thing, or if you're stuck, if you're in a place where you're not loving the work you're coming up with, if you're feeling a little uninspired, just look at stuff. Spend a whole day just looking at stuff that interests you. Go to a library, for Christ's sake. In fact, that whole it's funny I mentioned the library. That whole I was taking a little walk, wow, months ago, and I happened upon this little botany library, and I picked up just randomly a book about lichens, and that's where I got all the reference imagery and inspiration for the piece we did last week. You know, and it was like apropos of nothing. It came out of nowhere. It was certainly not like design related. It was just a book about God, one of the lowest life forms on the planet, these lichens. But gosh, it's inspiring stuff, and it led to a really cool piece. So I don't know. Vary your sources. Look at different stuff. Go outside. Read a fucking book. Hey, Iggy, Eggy, thanks for stopping by. There's a lot of inspiration out there, right? Right. So I don't know about this temple yet. I need some sort of cool heads. Oh, look, these are like the same heads, it looks like. Maybe that's the next step. Let's do that. Oops. Excuse me. Did anyone get a chance to check out any of those sketch streams? I know that they're awfully different from the type of stuff I typically work on, but I've been really enjoying them actually, and they're really simple to put together, especially as compared to this kind of thing. What's going on here? As I was explaining in the intro, um, it's kind of great because these are so long and they take a while to put together, and I have to put a little bit more thought into them. And I don't think it's always the easiest thing for viewers even. 'Cause I don't think anyone watches really the 2 hours, or the people that do are awesome, but somewhat infrequent. So I'm thinking, just sketches like that are so much easier for folks to get down with. Like, it's funny. It's even like what I was just saying. Like, don't design for other designers. Clearly, this is largely geared towards folks who are into digital art and cinema 4D. So, yeah, thanks, right? Oh, so funny you should mention that, Dexter. I was looking at pro cameras, and I was looking at tripods and all this stuff, and it was, obviously expensive. And for something that, I wasn't sure how much of a future there would be, just something I wanted to sort of try quickly. I didn't feel like investing all this money in like pro camera setups and all this, all the different software, and of course the tripod and everything like that. So I kept it really, really simple, and I actually just came up with a little design that I was able to construct with, you know, $5 or $8 worth of pine dowels from the local hardware store, which I super glued together with little spacers, and actually just I set them up on some books, and span a gap with just two. It's basically two dowels, that are attached to each other with spacers in between. So it almost looks sort of like a railroad track. And I just rest my phone on that, put it on top of some books, and I'm able to draw underneath my phone. I found this software. What is it called? My phone's all the way over there. On the software, it's like $5 or $6, and it turns your iPhone into, or any smartphone really. Actually, I think you can use it on Android, but it turns your phone into like a webcam. So I'm able to just use my phone as a camera, which is cheap and easy. Now, if I keep doing those things and if people like them, maybe I'll invest in a proper setup one day, maybe a higher end webcam, some sort of camera, maybe a legit tripod instead of something I made. But, the point is, I sort of, last week I had a hankering to do some live sketch streaming. I felt inspired. I did a few minutes of sketching, came up with a design, went to the hardware store, grabbed, less than $9 worth of materials, a little bit of super glue and some dowels and some spacers, and I was able to construct something that would hold the phone up. And yeah, I've since done like I think 6 streams. So planning on bringing you more. And what I've been doing actually is I've been taking the raw footage and speeding it up. So on my Instagram page, you can watch like 1 minute recap videos, which is kind of cool. If you don't feel like sitting through the full 20 minutes, check out my Instagram page. When we do one that we like, I typically we'll speed that one up. I think there's like three up there now. A little music to them, and it's fun. It's fun sharing a sped up version with Instagram. They've been doing pretty well actually. Oh, great. Yeah, DIY is best. There's this concept in the Silicon Valley called MVP, minimum viable product. I think it's really about the idea of like, don't let your excuses come in the form of like, oh, I don't have the right tripod. I don't, whatever. My equipment's not good enough. I don't have enough personnel, whatever. So the idea of minimum viable product is like to test the validity of an idea, to prove out the value of a thought, you need to bring it to market and get it in front of people to see if they like it or not, right? And it'd be a real waste to come up with the most perfect polished product, or like in my instance, to buy an amazing webcam and a sick tripod and all that stuff, and to realize A, I don't like doing them, and B, there's no market for it anyway, and all of a sudden I'm out like whatever, however many hundreds of dollars. Whereas in this case, I can test my theory using the minimum amount of input needed to test the viability of a product, right? So that's what they call MVP, minimum viable products. I'm all about that. Hmm. I think what shape for the mouth will work best here. Blah blah blah. I'm gabbing away and I'm not making anything. Yeah. It's looking pretty ferocious. Grr. What do you think? Too many teeth? That's kind of silly. So I'm going to do this kind of the down and dirty way and just expand these and delete out what I don't need. I don't really feel like making a bool. So let's try some test renderings. I think we'll keep it fairly simple. Hey, Chris. Yes, architecture. So the plan this week is to just model this really cool temple, add a bunch of details, get it looking sweet, and then I think we'll do is next week we'll add this into another one of those crazy displacement scenes. Because I really liked how that came together, and I wanna build one of those, but add a little more detail to it, some more interesting architecture. So thanks for stopping by. I think if we build this up, add some sort of step-like structures, it'll probably feel a bit more like a temple. Right now, it's not feeling that like impressive or grand, to be honest. But I think maybe elevating it a bit will help. So let's try that. I mean, you can see what I'm doing is I'm actually using these segment previews to line my stuff up. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. And I'm just using the handles to position these along these sort of corner pieces. Sort of adding tiers. I think these tiers feel very temple-like. So we consider doing this with a cloner, but what would happen is the size of this rounding would increase with each successive clone, and the proportions would get distorted, and I don't want that. I want all of these roundings to be the same, even though the steps themselves are getting wider and deeper. I'm sure there's a way to work around that and do a more automated process, but I don't know it. So if you know it, let me know, and then we'll all know. Ugh. That's feeling more temple-like already, actually, given that additional height. I can make some of these segments taller. There's a better view of it. I'm going to play with just a few of the material presets and see if we can't get a little bit more of a stone kind of feel to this guy. I want to keep it fairly simple, but I want to give it a bit of texture. I think it needs to feel at home in the landscape we create for it next week. This is kind of fun, you know. We don't always do these two-parters, um, but it's cool. It's cool to build on these, and you know, you can't always get a full piece done in the approximately 2 hour time slot that we set up for ourselves. So I think it's cool to be able to build and sort of stack episodes in a way. And I'm creating this with sort of the next phase of the process in mind. And that being said, I want to choose something that's got a bit of detail to it that feels natural, but isn't overly complicated because this is going to be dropped into an environment eventually that's very complicated. And I think we'll need to make sure they don't compete. And here's a useful thing. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but you're about to. If you're dealing with any range, any number in the size, position, or rotation, or really, I think in any field inside of Cinema 4D, what you can do is just you can divide, or you can do arithmetic right in these little fields, right? So you could do that number 324.38 divided by 2. It'll just automatically do that right in your viewport. You could subtract by 10. Really, any multiplication, division, addition, or subtraction you can do directly inside these little number input fields, which is pretty awesome. Very useful. I use it all the time. And actually, what I think I'm going to do is divide by 2 again, because I want them 4 times smaller. Let's try this. Let's see if we can get them to line up. I'm just going to take this height value. And actually, I'm going to make it negative. That's the wrong value. So now these things are going to stack exactly on top of each other. And I'm hoping they line up with the steps themselves. And it doesn't look like that's the case yet. Oop. Looks like it's close though. You know, those steps aren't lined up perfectly. I did do them by hand, so we're not going to have it dead on. Some of these are fairly close. Let's see how it looks rendered out. That is incredible. Look at that thing. Wow. Hmm. I'm not sure I know that scene exactly, but I'll have to check that out if it looks anything like this, because this image is totally badass. It's crazy. I wonder how old this is. Badass. And Ujpachu. Ujpachu. Sorry, I have no idea how to pronounce that, but thanks for the comment. Appreciate it. I gotta be honest, I think my least favorite part of this temple is the face at this point. I may swap that out. He's just not really like meshing the rest of it. It's feeling a little weird. Maybe we find that, if we drop it into the scene next week, we may discover that really we don't even need the face. Maybe just the architecture is enough. All right, so let's just see how it looks without that head. It'll obviously need something else there, but maybe the whole thing just looks better without it. That's funny. Chris has got I was gonna say the lyrics, got all the dialogue memorized from Mortal Kombat. Pretty badass. Yeah, maybe that's better. So maybe if I add enough detail, we wouldn't even need that face. I'm starting to think that that's maybe the case. Oops. I hate to say it, but I think I'm enjoying the simple geometric architectural details here a bit more than I'm liking the way that face was looking. So I think we found our way forward. Hmm. I think that last set of stuff was a bit too much, actually. I'm gonna hit undo a bunch of times. There we go. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I don't think that was the right move. Hmm. Maybe that guy will work better as sort of a side note, as a smaller detail, not as sort of the central focal point of the temple. Thanks, Dexter. Appreciate it, man. And we're making good progress. I think I'm coming up to the point where I may call this, a finished model. And what's cool is we're going to be carrying it over to the next stream. So I think it'll fit well in there. And I can't make up my mind about that head. Supposed to design a new one next week. Um, we could always give ourselves a little more time to mull it over, which is the beauty of doing a two-parter like this. And, for just really quickly grabbing some material presets, it actually looks okay. I love the physical sky. Use that with a little global illumination with your QR turned on, and it looks really sweet, or QMC rather, not QR. Quasi Monte Carlo. What the hell that means? So what do you guys think? Do you have a preference between the face or no face? Drop a comment if you have a preference either way. I mean, here's how it looked with. Kind of spooky and big. Maybe it just needs to be a different style of head because there's always something cool about the carving of what you can only assume is some sort of deity or maybe ancient ruler, right? But in terms of the composition and aesthetically, I'm just not sure it belongs there. And it may be a detail that's just too much overall once we actually drop it into the final landscape. But you guys have a preference? Doorway head was dope. Okay, so you like the doorway head. All right, that's cool. To be honest, I'm not sure, Dexter, what exactly the QMC does, but I know it's an well. Let's do a test actually. Let's turn it off. No secondary method. Let's compare the two. Do another rendering. I think what that does is add additional bounce to the light that makes it read a little bit more realistic. But I'm not sure if I've ever done a side-by-side comparison, so let's do that. Let's also the angle slightly off on this, so let's kick that back in. Oops. Yeah. Give you a little bit more of a realistic bounce. A little bit more light bouncing around the composition. You see, this is with and this is without. A little bit more of a fill. Got it. Thanks for the feedback, you guys. So it's fairly split. It seems like actually even there might be a few more people who enjoyed the big head at the top. So let's reconsider it next week. Maybe it does belong up there. Maybe I'll have a different opinion about it after not looking at it for a little while. Or maybe we discover that this whole thing is just way too complex and we need to pare it down and simplify it. And we may even find that those pyramid structures that we did last week are what works best, with a really detailed and rich landscape like we're going to get into next week. Maybe the transverse of that is we don't go as deep and rich and complex in the landscape. Still allow it to be textural and cool, but maybe just a little bit less intense to allow this temple to really shine. That's the beauty of digital art is we can push and pull and retry things as many times as we like and get things to a place where we're just super psyched about them. But we're about an hour and 40 minutes in, and I'm pleased with how this came together, regardless of where we wind up putting that big sculptural head, whether it's way up there, way down here. I think we've set ourselves up to have a pretty sweet temple to incorporate into next week's scene. So, it's been a pleasure as always. I appreciate the routine subscribers coming back every week. It's always good to see your friendly, familiar faces and names in the chat. I'm always having a good time putting this type of thing together. Keeps me on the ball, keeps me staying productive and busy, and it's fun to share and put this in front of everyone's eyes. So if you liked what you saw, please hit the subscribe button below. Give us a thumbs up. Share with a pal. If you want to keep up with the types of things I'm working on, I'm at DLGNCE on pretty much any social media channel you could look to care about. I just created a Snapchat account. I'm not sure if any of you guys use that. I'm still figuring the whole thing out, but I'm at DLGNCE on that as well. Give me a follow. Check out the sketch streams I've been doing lately. There's going to be many more of those, although they're not going to be scheduled and they're not going to be as long as this. I'm just going to keep pumping those out so I can stay productive and getting cool stuff for you guys to look at. New portfolio site URL. It's diligence.studio, so check that out. Psyched about the fancy new URL. And, you know, I'm looking forward to sharing with you again next week. So until that time, we'll see you next week, Tuesday, 12 Pacific. Sorry, I always do that. 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern, and we'll see you back there at that point. Until then, I'm Stuart saying goodbye. Thanks a lot.